So I got Kris today. He's already been on the show and he was showing us how to Dockerize an Angular application. We did an Angular 14 Dockerization and we did an Nginx server for that in a production environment. Thanks, Kris, for coming on again.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. And for those who might have missed it, again, I'm Kris Rivera and I'm a principal software engineer and I've been a software developer for over 15 years now. I love it. It's the best thing ever.
And a DockerCon presenter.
And a DockerCon keynote presenter. Yes, thank you.
Awesome. So what are we doing today, Kris?
So now what we're going to do is we're going to take what we did before, where we built an image and we ran a container of our production Angular application, and we're going to actually loop in the API side of things. We're going to make sure that that is built inside of an image as well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to learn something new with Docker Compose, which is an orchestration software and utility that Docker provides as well to allow us to start up both images at the same time, allow them to talk to each other, and then be able to shut them both down with a single command. And it works so well.
Yeah, this is where we left off last time. This is our current Docker file. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. There's going to be a link down below for that video. And this is where we are. This is where we're starting off. And this is just the running application. This is what it looks like. Well, it is what it looked like.
Yes. Go to if you go to /, there's another configuration that we can add where is specific to Nginx for single page application. So if you just at the very least remove the dashboard off of that URL, you'll be able to get back to the root there. There's a specific configuration that allows us to allows Nginx to serve the index no matter what's in the URL, and then allow the single page application to route to it. So we just didn't do that for this example because that's getting more into the nitty gritty of what Nginx does, and that's not the purpose of this video.
Okay, good to know that. So it is still running, the container is still up, but there's no data in this application. So that's what we're gonna do now.
Exactly. So let's go to, so what we're going to do is you've already cloned your front end application. So what we want to do is something a little different. We want to actually have the front end application cloned as a sibling to the backend application. And we likely will want to create a new folder for that just to have them kind of tightly together, but in one subdirectory. So why don't we cd to the parent directory of this RPS tracker ng project, and then let's make so this is already in a Dockerization folder, so this is perfect actually. Let's clone your API into this folder.
All right, so that's this project, and I'm going to clone this one. By the way, these are available on my GitHub. They're publicly available, so you can check it out too.
Perfect.
Git clone. All right, perfect. There it is.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a different, so we want to actually open up a new VS Code window, and we want to open the Dockerization folder instead of just the individual project.
All right, have you tried this? This is like Inception, opening code from code. There it is.
It works perfectly. So we don't need that other window in the back. We're good to go. Okay, so this is great. So we have our, the changes that we've made to our front end application. We've added a Docker file. We've added a Docker ignore as well. So let's go into the RPS API directory now. And you already have a Docker file in here. You've already done some work on this.
Sorry, I couldn't wait.
No, this is great. Honestly, this is perfect. I'm sure now with your Docker expertise that you have from the other project, you might even be able to see maybe a few, things that we could do to make this a little more faster or be able to improve this. But this is Express, right? This is an Express server that you're running for the backend, right? So this is what we want to do for production. So instead, on that CMD line, we want to change, instead of having it be npm run dev, we want to just do npm run prod. So because we never want to deploy anything that's not minified and obfuscated, because we want things to run as fast as possible, and we don't want people, if you do deploy this for any production level or enterprise level type of work, we don't want people to be able to see what's inside, right? We don't want people to copy our source code, right?
Wow, there is a I gotta say, I've only used this in development, but that's interesting. There is a prod script there.
You did say this was this was publicly available, and I did my homework beforehand. So, right. Okay, so this is great though. You already have an image. You already have an image that runs in production, and it exposes port 8080 to, the Docker network as well. So this is good to go. Like, we don't even need to do anything. We can actually, we don't even have to worry about this. We could kind of dive right into writing the Docker Compose file. But before we do that, we need to do one other thing inside our front-end application. So when we spin up our front-end application, we need to know where the API lives, right? And so we need to go to our source, and there's an environments folder in there.
Yep.
And there's a production one. And so that URL for line 3 is not going to get us what we want in a Docker Compose environment. So what we're going to change that to, instead of produrl.com, we're going to change that to localhost port 8080. And then drop the com, yep. And then remove the extra slash as well, because everything else adds a slash for you. So when we see those API calls, it'll be a nice, clean, segmented. So that's all you have to do, because we're building in the Docker file a production version. Therefore, it's using this production environment, and therefore the API endpoint is going to be pointing to our Dockerized RPS API runtime.
This is a little bit different, this Docker file, because you have copying of the package to // instead of just period, and the working directory is a little bit different. So it's
all a preference. There's nothing. So you notice how you did on line 5. It's package star.json. So it's copying package and package lock.json, and so that's copying both in one line. And in addition, // and dot are the same thing. It's just saying at the root here. There's no difference, because if you notice on line 9, you're copying dot to dot as well.
Now, what about the working directory? Those are different.
So the working directory is a little different, because notice how in our front-end application, we're compiling to some location that is totally isolated from anything else. It's just some temp directory. And then we throw it away on line 17 when we run and pull down our Nginx stable. So we don't really care. It's more of a preferential working directory. But in the case of our Docker file for our API here, this is actually the final container, right? That's why and maybe this is the biggest difference of all, is that the Nginx stable has its own CMD line in it, or an entry point command that gets executed when the container starts. And that's the thing that starts up the web server daemon that runs inside of the Nginx container. And that's already built and set up in the image. Whereas in the RPS API one, if you wouldn't mind going to that file, the image that we're using is node 12. And so in /app, there's a lot of different ways that companies can indicate, like it's the root of your drive on the image, and this is where the actual application lives. Like, it's up to the user where they decide where they want to put these files. As all. Okay. And so because this is the actual de facto, like node by itself, the image doesn't have a CMD line. And because the node image is more of a utility image that you use for building, but we're using it and then we're executing the npm run prod command. So now it becomes an actual web server, that express web server that's going to be serving up our API content, right? Okay,
gotcha.
Okay. So,
all right, let's continue.
Yeah, all right. So the images are great, actually. We don't even need to build an image ourselves. This is going to be awesome. So at the root of our Dockerization folder, I would like you to create a new file called docker-compose.yaml. And it's like YML and YAML, they're both the same. Thankfully, they're too many people have written one or the other, and I think they're definitely both supported. If you notice, you did YML and the Docker Compose, the little Docker whale shows up on the left, and YML, same thing, right? There's no difference to Docker, thankfully. So this is a different type of structural writing. So the Docker file is very script oriented, add, run, commit. This YAML is far more configuration oriented. So it's going to be written a little differently as well than a Docker file, but there's specific purposes for that as well. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to check which version of Docker you're running, because have you updated it recently? Because they recently switched to using Docker Compose version 2 as the de facto version. So if we look at, let's see, that's version 20. I think let's go to software updates and let's see quickly just how you're currently on 4.6, latest version is 4.8. I think we should be fine. But if we run into any problems running the Docker Compose command, then we're going to have to run an update on this.
Okay, let's try it.
Okay, so let's jump out of this and let's go to the Docker Compose file. So the first thing that we're going to do is demarc and write the word version : and then quote 2.4. And it has to be double quotes as well. It's very specific. It's just like a JSON file. And you need to add a space after the colon as well.
Oh.
It's very, very, very specific. So this is indicating to the Docker Compose utility or software saying I'm running this with version 2.4, so therefore there's a different set of supported commands and other different configuration lines that we can use. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up our services. So on the next line, we're going to write services : Yep, and then we're going to new line, and we're going to write our first service. So tab it over one, and then we're going to call this one interface. This is like our web interface, : and then we're going to new line and tab again. And now this is going to be the really cool thing, and you're going to really like this. We're going to write a build command. So we're going to write build, and then : space, and it's the path to our RPS Tracker NG project. So it's / RPS Tracker NG. Perfect. And now the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to expose certain ports. And so we're going to go down to the next line, and at the same spot we're going to say ports : and then on the new line tab, and we're going to say hyphen or dash, yep, and space 80 : 80. So where we 80 : 80, we're not doing 80 : 80 : 80. We're doing 80 : 80. We're going to do 80 : 80. So what we're literally doing is mapping localhost to, because port 80 is the default port if you don't provide a port. So we're just mapping port 80 this time because we're starting up the actual, this is the whole thing actually starting up, and this is the actual thing, with the API. This is the most deployable scenario that we're trying to write here, right? So gotcha. When you would never, you rarely would deploy, you never go to google.com port 8080, right? Right. You always go to google.com. So this is what we're trying to simulate here as well. So on the same tab as interface, let's go to the next, let's go new line and write API. And we're going to new line, and we're going to type build as well. And I think you might see the pattern going on here. So this one's RPS API. And then we're also going to expose different ports here. So ports, and we're going to map, yep, dash, and then 8080 to 8080. So remember that when we run our production environment, if you wouldn't mind going back to the environment prod ts folder or file, you notice again, localhost port 8080, right? And so in the Docker Compose YAML, we want to make sure to expose our API on port 8080 so that the front end can access it. That sounds good?
So this right here, this 8080 is the exposed This is for the front end to access.
Yes.
Right? This 8080. And this 8080 is the RPS API.
Yes, exactly.
Exposed 8080.
And that's the cool thing. Like, you can have 20 containers that all expose port 80, but you can map them on your host via the left side of the colon.
Yeah. So to make this a little bit more clear, let's do 8081, and we'll have to change this one to 8081. Would that work?
Perfect. Yep, 100%. Let's make sure to see.
What about this?
That I'm not 100% sure where that environment flag is being used, but probably change it just to keep up to date as well. I don't know if your Express server might be reading that port and using it.
Okay.
But that is not necessary for, at the very least, exposing the port on a Docker container.
Right. Okay, let's give it a shot.
Okay, so this is great. We have exactly what we need. We are done, basically. You're gonna get floored. So let's make sure first that let's go open up the terminal, and let's make sure this is Docker PS, because remember we still had that other
we do have that one
running. So let's Docker stop RPS tracker ng. Okay, and remember we had that --rm on there, so that means that it actually killed the container. So if you do Docker PS -a, that will let us know if it really got removed, that name. Okay, so now we're gonna do one thing, and it's gonna be the magic line. It's gonna be
the magic.
It's gonna be Docker -compose.
Oh, what's the difference between Docker -compose and just Docker space compose?
That there's no compose command for Docker. It's a different piece of software. Docker -compose is a different piece of software from Docker. Docker compose uses Docker. So it's an orchestration software on top of Docker.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think I've used Docker compose with a space before, and Docker compose the tool.
They may have provided an alias to Docker -compose via Docker space compose, but if you want to run the actual Docker compose program directly, it's Docker -compose.
This is the way you'd recommend doing it.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we're gonna do up space -d space --build. And so what that's going to do is that it's going to trigger building each of these Docker images and then run them both in a detached mode. That's what the -d is for, so that you're not stuck looking at the logs. You can just run it and then go, and then you can shut it all down. So let's try it.
Question for you before we do.
Sure.
If this was called build F, and this was called build F, then you need to pass in build F here?
No, it would not work, because build F is not a command.
I don't know. I was just trying.
Nope.
Okay.
All
let's
good.
do it.
All right. So now you're gonna see some. Ooh.
What did I do? I broke something. That's for sure.
Oh, it's services. Yep. There we go. Try it again. Here we go. So you'll notice very similar lines here. We're running the adding, and we're building the actual files, and that's the interface one. Like, and you can name line 3 and line 7. You can name them whatever you want. I just figured interface and API were the two names. So those you can name whatever you want. Now you'll notice we're actually we're pulling down node 12 right now, because that's the node version that's in the API one, and it's just downloading it, and it's going to extract everything, and then you won't ever have to do that again either.
You make this look super easy.
It's just lots of years of reading documentation and putting it together is all. It's not easy, it's simple, right? Like everything's there, everything's documented, everything is very powerful. It's just understanding what you can do with it and knowing where to look to find out. It's like, I want to do this next thing. How do I do that? And honestly, I've spent many hours on Stack Overflow just looking. So it looks like everything is up and running. So let's do a Docker PS just to verify. And you'll notice we didn't provide a name for this, but notice the names, so the image is now scoped. It's like, so the first image line is Dockerization _ API. Docker Compose will take the parent folder that you're in and prepend that to the name of this. And then the next thing, and build the image. And then the actual running container is dockerization _API _1. You see how kind of looped around there? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
this is very, very clever.
And then the same thing, the interface and interface 1. So if all went well, we should just be able to go to localhost and get data. Not even 8080. Yep.
Hey, look at that. Well,
now
there's no data.
Oh, and I remember we need to drop that. This is interesting because it definitely did work when I did it.
Well, you know what? We did mess around with the ports. Maybe we shouldn't have done that.
Not sure about that. Let's try one other thing. I do have one other additional line here that you should not need. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look at the debug tools inside of Chrome and see what the network requests that are being made. And that might give us the smoking gun here. So we will need to remove that filter and also go back to localhost. So there's a little filter that's on there. If you go down 2 lines and to the left, it says like VTT or something. So you see where do you see where you selected the network tab in the debug console, and then down one line there's like disable cache, and then down one line there's hide data URLs. If you go all the way to the left, there's like a filter on this.
Oh.
Yeah. There we go. So why is it we are not actually? Let's do one more. Let's get rid of the dashboard again, and let's hit enter on the URL, and let's. I want to see. Okay, status counts. Let's click on that because that is the one that failed. Do you see that request? The first one, the red line.
This.
Yes, and then let's go to.
Let's
go to headers.
API thing.
So let's go to the to the right of where you just selected. There's a headers tab. So you selected the status counts, and then there's the little window popped open to the right, and there's a headers there. So localhost port 8080/API/stats ? $! I wonder if that $! is causing issues. Let's navigate to another page just to see if we're getting any data anywhere else. But I do have one other sneaking suspicion of what's going on, because look at that. Open items is also okay. So there may be one other thing that I may have been remiss in. Let's take a look at the Docker Compose file again. And so we are mapping port 8080 to port 8081. And inside of the Docker file, we are exposing port 8081. Let's revert that to port 8080 as well, and here as well, because I'm not sure what indeed the Express app is doing under the covers with that environment. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna stop this. So we're gonna do docker-compose space down.
Boom,
perfect.
Gone.
And if you do a docker ps-a, you'll see nothing exists. It's all gone. So Docker Compose handles adding, stopping, removing containers also for you. Because
nice, yeah.
All right, so let's do our Docker Compose up command. We're going to make sure to have that -- build flag at the end. And notice how it ran through everything in like a second, because everything's already done. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's check it out.
Yes.
There they are.
So the port. It's the port. And
see, I messed with it. And that's what happens when I mess with it.
That's all I know is I'm not sure if there's any other 8080s hard-coded in your Express server and how that environment variable is being used, but obviously 8080 is the one that we need to use on the back end for this. But there you have it. You have a fully running, full-fledged running container. 8080 is not going to work there, but oh yes, the API. Yeah, you should be able to hit that for sure, like especially in Postman. I don't know if look at that.
It works.
Yeah. So you have, like I said, you have a fully fledged production grade application, both front and back end running, all with one command.
This is great. I love it.
And we're done. That's it. You have it. It's all ready to go.
I'm Dockerized now,
You're fully
and I know how to do it.
Yeah, you do. It's perfect.
Now I just got to go and take this information and try to apply it into another project and see if I retained any of this.
Well, you'll have this video to refer back to, and of course, I'm always happy if you reach out and have any questions. I'd be very happy. And for anyone else watching this video, please feel free if you have any questions. Also, my Twitter handle is down below, and so is my LinkedIn URL. So please feel free to reach out, connect with me, DM me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or just point you in the right direction as well. So
thanks, Kris. This is awesome, and I hope you come back and show us more stuff with Docker later on.
Oh, definitely.